Hi, this is AJ from Movie Health. Just like to let you know that this episode mentions suicide on a couple of occasions. If you're personally affected by this topic, please take care of your well-being and seek support. Thank you and enjoy the episode. The Movie Health podcast is proudly supported by Telemoods by eClapper Project Inc. Telemoods recommends which movies and TV series to watch by matching the user's mood and real-time offer of all streaming platforms. Download Telemoods today. Well, welcome to the Movie Health podcast. This is AJ, and today we're talking to Dr. Paul Zak. Paul is a well-known scientist, author, public speaker, focusing on understanding neuroscience of the human connection, happiness, and effective teamwork. Paul's research emphasizes creating extraordinary experiences and leveraging neuroscience to quantify the impact of various stimuli like movies, advertising, stories, and consumer experiences. Paul is also a professor of economics, psychology and management at Claremont Graduate University. And Paul has also founded a number of technology companies, including Immersion Neuroscience, the first neuroscience SaaS platform or NAS platform. And lastly, Paul is a renowned public speaker, having done a number of TED Talks. So I highly recommend you checking out those TED Talks. So welcome, Paul. Thank you so much for being part of this podcast.
Of course. Thanks, AJ. Great to be on with you.
So the Movie Health podcast, we talk about our favorite movies and tips for mental health. And today, we're here to talk about your favorite movie, which is Wings of Desire, which is a 1987 romantic fantasy film by Wim Wenders, which tells a story of an immortal angels in Berlin, set around the same time, I believe, focusing on one angel who falls in love with a human trapeze artist and chooses to become mortal. So it's directed by Wim Wenders, written by Wim Wenders, and stars Bruno Granz and Peter Falk, aka Columbo, which I thought was fascinating. So I hadn't seen this movie before. That's one of the things that I love about this work or that this podcast is learning about new movies and why movies resonate with other people. So Paul, tell me about this movie. Why is it one of your favorite movies? Where did you first watch it? What were you doing in 1987?
Yeah, so many good questions. I do think the favorite movie is, person, time, and place, right? So I was an undergraduate student in college and was studying everything I get my hands on. And the movie starts in black and white in Berlin with two guys, I don't know what they are, and a guy standing on top of a very tall building, and the guy jumps off and commits suicide. So you're like, okay, what the heck's going on here? And then you discover very quickly that these two men are angels. Humans can't see them, but they will put their hand on your shoulder or a person's shoulder on the subway or on the street and be able to read their thoughts. And haven't you always thought about that? Like, I really wonder what that person is thinking. And often those thoughts in the movie are so poignant. Why am I here? Does anyone love me? Why does this person treat me so badly? These questions that we all have occasionally. And I think particularly when you're younger, you're in your 20s, you do ponder this. Like, why the hell am I here? Like, what? Some accident, sperm and egg, and show up. And the movie has a Wizard of Oz like conceit, which is when this angel falls in love with a human and decides to give up his angel life, then the movie changes from black and white to color. And it's almost like two separate. Bruno Ganz is just amazing. The German actor, very expressive. And Peter Falk plays, as you know, a fallen angel. So he's a former angel who also decided to join the human world. And he's such a character actor, but such a character in the movie as well. And you get this sense of he discovers that Bruno Gantz's, you know, angel. He can tell if you're a former angel, and so they start having a relationship. And you have this sort of deep philosophical discussion about why are we here? What are we doing? You know, the angel who Bruno Gantz's character gives up being an angel, infinite life and happiness, because he falls in love.
Mm.
So then you have this interesting story about, is the whole reason we're here to love others? And if we're loving others, then why are we holding back? Why are we not fully committing to love? Why are we not giving up infinite life in heaven if we love someone? So that's kind of deep philosophical questions. And it's filmed beautifully. The music's beautiful. Yeah, I don't know why it's such a favorite movie of mine, but it has been for many years.
Yeah, and you mentioned Peter Falk's character, which I actually looked up. I won't pronounce it in German, but his character's name is actually the film star. And
Oh,
so, a little bit
wow.
of a spoiler, but Peter Falk is a film star within this film, and there was this actually a scene where he's walking, I think, just somewhere in Germany. It looked like a construction site. And a group of guys walked past him and said, "Hey, is that Columbo?" And one of the guys goes, "No, that's not Columbo. He's looking at his jacket's not very good, or it looks a bit scruffy or something like
Mhm.
that." So I thought that was that was pretty meta that they
Right.
positioned him as a fallen angel, or an angel that's transitioned as a human, but is also positioned as a as a film star.
I did leave out one of the most important reasons why I love this film. It's based on the poetry of my favorite poet, Karl Maria Rilke, a German romantic poet, who I've read everything he's written, including his letters to his lovers, and the movie, the dialogue in German has a very poetic feel to it. It's not
Yeah.
verbatim Rilke's poetry, but it has a lot of the hallmarks of that. So um, hearing it in German is very important. I don't speak German. I understand a little bit, but uh, there's a rhythmic basis for it that is absolutely beautiful. You can kind of just forget the subtitles and just go and absorb yourself into it. I've seen the movie too many times, probably.
Mm. Yeah, and yeah, because it is hard in a way to try and absorb everything, and when particularly when you're uh, when you're seeing the moments of just individual people and their inner thoughts. They are very specific lines of dialogue, and they do have that. They do resonate as it's sort of a poetic style, which is beautiful. So with the movie itself, I mean, it does have some fairly deep themes in it. We just touched on love, but what about the symbol of the angels in Berlin around the 80s?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. One is, in the 80s, Berlin was a divided city, literally divided city. And I think the angels and the humans, that's a metaphor for our divided self, our maybe our good self and our evil
Mm.
self. Um, and so I think it was very important that is in Berlin. Berlin has some just amazing buildings, and this hangover from the Nazi times, right? You still see some subtle, very fatherland first kind of symbolism in that, and the poetings of some of those lines, I think from the voiceover, uh, based on a set of poems by Rilke that start with, "When the child was a child." Well, I was still a child when I saw this. I was a young adult, but still very immature. And you do think about that, right? What's the nature of good and evil? And I spent 15 years of my scientific life studying good and evil, wrote a couple of books about it, and uh, I don't think that movie influenced my future course of my life, but it certainly was a topic I was already interested in. And so again, we're attracted to things that we already have some interest or facility with. So, I mean, I saw the movie randomly, whatever, with
Mm.
friends.
Yeah.
But, I think, that connection to Rilke, the idea of always trying to read people. So I'm I don't have Asperger's or anything, but I'm very emotionally flat. I don't show a lot of emotion. I have
Yeah,
emotions. I just don't show it a lot. It's just my personality. But I'm constantly trying to read people, and I think I've spent so much time creating technologies to measure emotional states. Partially because I just like to understand what the humans are going through, and because I'm less emotional, I'm fascinated by people with these big emotional states. And I think the angels do the same kind of thing, right? They are listening in on the most intimate emotional experiences people are having, like suicide, like that. And I think what's interesting about the movie for me, or one of the many things that's interesting, is the inability of the angels to intervene, other than putting a hand on the shoulder, which in some parts of the movie provides some sort of solace to people who are suffering. Everyone's suffering, but they can't stop the guy from jumping off the building. They're
mm,
not allowed, or whatever. Within that world, they're not allowed to intervene in the human world. And in college, I had a good friend who committed suicide, and so it's really meaningful that everyone suffers. No one gets through life without scars, and I think we have an obligation as human beings to provide solace to the extent that we can to those around us, because we live in this divided world of, I don't want to be a sucker, I don't want to be taken advantage of. And my friend who committed suicide in college she had a drug problem, she had a bunch of other issues, but she really took advantage of people, and she
yeah,
basically isolated herself and tried twice before she succeeded in killing herself. But there's this real kind of guilt, like, have I done enough? Should I have helped her more? Should I have reached out more? Should I have been that angel that
yeah,
would sit and listen, or offer help, or get her into rehab, or who knows? It's hard to know when you're 21, 22 years old. What the right thing to do is. So I think the movies struggle with those kind of themes. And by the way, it's not a movie for everyone. For listeners, it's
yeah,
got subtitles.
yeah.
It's quite nonlinear. And like I said, it's almost two movies, which is also very interesting. So if you, for people who are listening, if you would like to see an unusual movie about the human condition that it doesn't really resolve well, in my view. The end is odd in many ways, just as we struggle. I think that's the point of the movie, is that we all struggle, and I think we should be empathic to everyone else's struggle. So that was a really long, circuitous answer to a very
No, no,
precise
no.
question you asked. So I'm sorry if I was rambling.
No, and there's a lot, and I'm fascinated by the decisions and the intentions that filmmakers make. And Wim Wenders, at the time he won Best Director at Cannes for this film, just to his approach to the cinematography. And it's, as you mentioned, that black and white and there's different parts of the film that actually have that vibrant color. And so you spend a lot of time in the black and white with observing the angels, and then when Damil transitions to a human form, it turns into color. But uh, with health, and particularly mental health, and what people are experiencing, there is that separation, which I think was trying to be conveyed in the film. So the separation between the angels and the humans, in experience, and also of the time in Germany, with that literal separation between East and West. So I mean, very very obviously insightful and personal points that you make there, Paul, because there's certainly intention there, in the way the film's been designed to create some sort of emotional response, to the concepts of desire, and certainly spirituality, which is conveyed through the angels as well. Have you seen any of Wim Wenders' these other films recently?
Not recently. I saw Paris, Texas, and
Yeah,
maybe one other film. He's not a typical filmmaker. He's more of an independent, oddball guy. Um,
yeah, yeah. There's no, and not to set you up, but and I may have mentioned that to you at one point, but his most recent film is called Perfect Days,
right.
and you'd probably really appreciate it. It's about it's set in Japan, and it was done to represent sort of the post-pandemic state of Japan, and it follows a Japanese man who cleans toilets for a living, and he lives a very simple, isolated life. The film is throughout the film. There's a lot of well-known 60s and 70s music. So he'll get ready meticulously, get ready for his day, and then in his very small apartment in Tokyo, get his uniform on, and get into his car and put on a tape, and it will be a Lou Reed's Perfect Day playing. And so you then if you follow this man to this creatively designed toilet in a public place, and he immaculately cleans this toilet. We actually did a podcast on it not long ago, but it does explore a lot of it does explore existential themes, like love and isolation and human connection, like Wings of Desire does, and it has that visual poetry. Wim Wenders has this ability to use storytelling techniques to convey emotions. The Hamel doesn't say a lot. We see just his emotion on his face, and it's the same with the character in Perfect Days. So there are some similarities in there, but obviously some differences. So I would highly recommend it. Music is a big part of Wim Wenders' films. And there was a couple of songs that were quite pivotal. Daniil experienced one. He was in a grunge sort of rock West Germany bar listening to music, and I've forgotten the name of the song for that one. But when he actually transitioned to a human, the musician that was playing was Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Do you know Nick Cave?
I do, yeah. Is he Australian?
He's Australian, yeah.
There
And
you
so that
go,
was
look at that.
probably in his he started in the 70s, so
Mhm.
it was well known at that stage. But he was singing a song, "The Carney," which apparently reflects the disappearance of carnival workers, because the circus was a big part of this movie as well. So we haven't mentioned the circus, but that's how Demille learned about the trapeze artist, or found the
Right.
trapeze artist.
And it's playing on
And
that trope of running away to join the circus, right? I'm gonna
it,
change my life by running away.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And
And he
I
does,
think,
and the angel does. He runs away and joins the circus. What could be
yeah,
better?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I thought that I was like, I know that voice. And then when there was a shot of Nick Cave
Mhm.
on stage, and then I think the last song is called for "From Her to Eternity," and he keeps repeating the word eternity. So
Mm.
that connects to themes of desire and emotion. What is it about visual poetry? What is it about films like Wings of Desire that use certain types of storytelling techniques to try and convey emotions from the director's point of view, but also emotions for people that are watching it, the audience?
So emotions are how the brain assigns value to an experience, right? Could be positive or negative emotions. Could be very angry. That says this is important, but also when we have positive emotions, this says this is like falling in love or whatever, or for that matter, a good meal. And so, yeah, what we found is by identifying how the brain assigns emotions to experiences, that we can then assess how much value that experience objectively creates for people who are having the experience, like watching a movie.
Hmm.
And in doing so, can ask why some movies, so higher value movies, so I call this evaluation network, as you know, immersion. So these
Yeah.
higher immersion movies, this is a I'm using immersion in a technical sense. It's a 1 second frequency data stream coming out of your brain that we can measure. Higher immersion movies in general have more ticket sales. So, I mean, that's the first thing. People value them more, and therefore more people buy tickets. So that's also important. But I think more generally, for the issues that we're interested in, AJ, the brain is, this social brain that we have, and I mean that in a technical sense. Anatomically, our brain is very, very different than most other mammals, and it's very similar to those mammals that are highly social. So we're acutely sensitive to social emotional information. Um, the brain's very promiscuous in how it gains that information or gains that value. So that could be talking to your romantic partner, it could be playing with your kids, it could be playing with your dog, and it can be watching a movie. And movies, um, TV shows have social emotional value, and the ones that have that value are able to potentially improve our mood states when they have this really peak immersion value. So for me, Wings of Desire has that
Yeah.
value. It's very, I don't know why, but even now, whatever this is, 40 years later, 35 years later, even thinking about it is very emotional for me. Like it's a very powerful experience in my life. And
Mm,
um, it's so wonderful to remember it, to re-experience that. So one thing we see in movie making is that contagion of emotion. So one reason I called this data stream from the brain immersion is it seems like when you're at a movie that's highly emotional, that you are sharing the emotions of the characters in that movie. And if those emotions are could be cathartic, they could be life enhancing. So to me, the Wings of Desire is a very life enhancing movie. Like I should be a better person. I should be more empathic. I should be more caring. Let me try to get in the mindset of doing that so that I am on the good side of Berlin and not the bad side of Berlin, if you will.
yeah.
Um, and I think that's a great lesson. And it's a lesson that is most effectively taught using story form. That's what we found neurologically, having measured over 50,000 brains and various experiences, that story structure is important, a narrative arc. And when those emotions are, I would say, authentic, right? These are professional actors who know how to kind of fully inhabit these characters. And when we see them, it certainly feels like, from the audience perspective, that those are truly authentic experiences those actors are having in the role of the characters they're playing. And therefore, we get to also share the horror of seeing someone commit suicide and the sympathy for someone who is suffering because their child died. We learn to vicariously experience those emotions, but in the brain, the vicarious part doesn't matter that much. As again, it's as if we are experiencing that loss or that joy ourselves. And in doing that, we basically train our brains to be more emotionally open in real life. And that is the
Mm.
magic of movies from a neurologic perspective. And certainly from a health or mental health perspective, it's vitally important.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I don't know if this is an example, but test it out. The Peter Falk character. So he's the movie star. There's a scene where I think they're at a cafe or a hot dog stand, and Peter notices Demille, and he explains the human experience in a way where he rubs his hands as a way to explain what it feels like to be human. That particular moment or scene, I had an emotional connection to, because it's so basic but yet so true. That feeling of making your hands warm, truly would have had that moment of immersion. And then conversely, as you said, there's a really sad scene where one of the angels is putting his hand on the shoulder of a man who is suicidal, and it doesn't end well. And it had the same effect. I was like, oh, that was only a moment. So there's that human experience that really connected with me in an emotional way. So those be examples within the film and the way that they were constructed to that
Yeah,
point
very,
of immersion?
yeah, very much so. So again, it could be that peak immersion experience is purely emotional, someone suffering, or it could be also somatic, right? So,
Mm.
I think one of the great parts about this movie is that we are embodied beings. We sometimes spend so much time in our heads that we forget about the physicality. And as you know, AJ, I'm sort of famous for hugging people. And so, there's a real reason for that. It's based on research I've done. But if I want to connect to you and I say, hey, I don't shake hands, I hug everybody, I'm creating that physical, somatic connection with you. And it's almost
Mm.
a brain hack where I'm convincing you that I am your friend. I'm a safe person to be around. I'm someone you can trust. And it's such a powerful effect to understand the embodiedness of ourselves and to live in that space.
Yeah, and so that's probably a great segue to mental health specifically, Paul, and the work that you do. You haven't mentioned immersion, but what are some of your personal tips for managing mental health?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I do think Wings of Desire is in my view, a deeply spiritual movie.
Yeah,
It's really about human connection, and that's what I've spent most of my life trying to understand from a brain perspective. Why do we connect? What's the value of that? So, as you know, we have a free app called Tuesday, which quantifies the value your brain gets from social and emotional connections neurologically. So it's comparable for you over time. No self-report. Your brain gets value from that. And what we found in the published research is that if you don't have enough social emotional value in your brain, then you begin to have what looks like depressive symptoms. Your mood is low, your energy is low, and there's a sort of cascading effect in which if you are socially isolated, then you kind of it gets harder to connect. And that's, I think, why movies are so important, again, because they're in some sense stretching our brain. They're sort of um, emotional exercise for the brain, just like you do physical exercise. Um, I use the word emotional fitness or the phrase emotional fitness to talk about how important it is to strengthen our ability to emotionally connect. And as I said earlier, the brain's very promiscuous on how you do this with your dog, watching a movie, with someone you like, someone you who's just an acquaintance. Um, and one of the fascinating things in life is that you can become friends very rapidly with someone you've just met for a whole
mm,
variety of reasons. And anyone who's over, I think, before you're 25, maybe it's harder. Maybe not. But even I'm in my 60s. It's so fun to meet some dude who would in a professional setting or social setting, and you become friends right away. Like, this is a guy that we're going to have so much fun together, and that's building that social connection. So I think one of the takeaways is that our brains are built for social connection, and that means I have to invest emotionally in that relationship. Invest. I got to make an
yeah,
investment for that relationship to be valuable and to build up my emotional fitness to avoid things like depression and anxiety disorders to the extent that you can. But the brain is so malleable that we can actually build up our emotional fitness. And so watching movies, absolutely great way to do it. Playing with a dog, absolutely. My dog's lying here. We've done research on animal human relationships, and dogs really do have the mechanisms in the brain to love their owners. It's not just something we say, and vice
mm,
versa, by the way. But then use all that training in movies and with your pet and to make those connections. There's a couple ways to do that. One is, I'll just offer two suggestions. One
yeah,
is the
sure.
use of adjectives. So normally when we see each other in a casual setting at work, say, "Hey, AJ, how are you? Good, how are you?" But if I add an adjective, it
Yeah,
changes the conversation into one which is more intimate and emotional. "Hey, AJ, you look happy, sad, tired, worried, whatever." And now you
hmm,
go, "Yeah, I am sad because my dog died, or my car got a flat tire, or my kid has the flu." And so we have a much more profound interaction, even if it's just 60 or 90 seconds, than just "How are you? Fine. How are you?" Right? That doesn't build that social connection that is essential for mental health. And the second is a funny one, which is some years ago, I do all kinds of experiments in the lab, but also on myself, like
hmm,
hugging people. Um, I decided to say hi to people in elevators, strangers. It is
Okay.
a fascinating thing to do. So first of all, I'm practicing to be a better connector because I'm an
Yep.
introvert and I'm happy not to talk for 12 hours. And about half the people I say hi to are freaked out, which somehow makes me
Yeah.
happy. And the other
Yeah.
half, you have a 20 or 30-second lovely conversation about something, like it's in a hotel or something like, oh, where are you coming in from? I just flew in from whatever, the Netherlands. Wow, I was in Amsterdam last year. And where do you live? What do you do? And it's really pleasant. So I think we have to practice building these emotional muscles, this emotional fitness to be really healthy. So when we
Sorry.
practice being socially, emotionally open, connecting to others, from watching movies to saying hi to people in elevators, we are building the essential components of mental health. So it
Mhm.
requires practice to build your emotional fitness. And that's why I love what you do, AJ. Those movies are such an easy way to
Mhm.
build those emotional muscles.
Yeah, absolutely. There was some really beautiful parallels as well, Paul, with your two tips. So the connection, and the way you engage with people in Wings of Desire, the angels were constantly doing that, and they were birds in their own way. They were unable to engage with people, and then there was, and then practicing with Demille's choice to become human and live that human experience. And even though he was sacrificing life of an angel to support people, he wanted to experience connection, being human, experiencing love, which is something that we all need to practice and ensure that we're doing on a regular basis. And that's the whole hypothesis of movie health. I mean, we believe in the health benefits of movies, and if we can use movies as a starting point to build awareness, and if you like movies, that's great. If you don't watch a lot of movies, that's also okay. We all know about movies, and then the cinematic experience, enjoying a movie with other people. And it's not just about going to the movie, it's about what you might do before the movie. So you might have a coffee with friends or family, you'll go and experience a piece of art, a piece of cinematic marvel, and then afterwards you might talk about it. And if you talk about that movie like we've done today, there's a very high likelihood that you'll be talking about other things than just the movies. Like how are you doing? How's work? How's the dog? And so that's certainly what we're trying to do with movie health. See where we go. It isn't, experimentation is a big part of it. And thank you so much for your support as well, over the last year, really, helping me better understand about mood and emotions, and how we can learn more about the, I suppose, that unconscious measurement of our experiences. Thank you so much for the recommendation as well. I love seeing new movies, and there's certainly parts of Wings of Desire that I won't forget. And the last thing I'll say, which I thought was really fascinating, and I think might be a really good way of wrapping up our conversation, is the the last, I suppose, the title card at the very end. I don't know if you remember what it says. It says "to be continued."
Beautiful. Oh,
So,
yeah.
and that, I don't think we have time to dig into that, but I thought that was, again, just so poetic, as you said. Um,
Right.
because Demille's life is going to continue in a different state. So
Right.
it
As
doesn't
our
end
as our
there.
lives do.
And if you said that the ending's a little strange, well, I think the intention there was to say, well, it's not the end. It continues,
Yeah.
and
It's
life
almost it's
continues.
now it's up to you, the audience. Now you need to continue the story. So
Yeah,
maybe we all can be embodied angels in our best selves.
there you go. Okay, well, thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate your time, your support, and look forward to working some more in the future.
Thank you so much.